Part-1-Discipline and Appeal Rules, 1968. These rules shall come into force on the first day of October, 1968. Application. These rules shall apply to every railway servant but shall not apply to A. Any member of the All India Services, B. Any member of the Railway Protection Force as defined in the Railway Protection Force Act, 1957, and C. Any person for whom special provision is made in respect of matters covered by these rules by or under any law for the time being in force or by or under any agreement entered into by or with the previous approval of the President before sigma epsilon after the commencement of these rules, in regard to matters covered by such special provisions. The President may, by order, exclude any class of railway servants from the operation of all or any of these rules. Appointing authority. Appointing authority in relation to railway servant means 1. The authority empowered to make appointments to the service of which the railway servant is for the time being a member or to the grade of the service in which the railway servant is, for the time being, included, or I. The authority empowered to make appointments to the post which the railway servant, for time being, holds, or A. The authority which appointed the railway servant to such service, grade way past, as the case may be, or 4. Where the railway servant having been a permanent member of any other service or having substantively held any other permanent post, has been in continuous employment under the Ministry of Railways, the authority which appointed him to that service or to any grade in that service or to that posts, whichever authority is the highest authority. Commission means the Union Public Service Commission. Disciplinary authority means I. In relation to the imposition of a penalty on a railway servant, the authority competent under these rules to impose on him that penalty means the competent authority to impose the penalty as per schedule in normal course, and in case of imposing major penalties such authority would be appointing authority. 2. In relation to Rule 9 and clauses A and B of Sub-Rule 1 of Rule 11 in the case of any gazetted railway servant, an authority competent to impose any of the penalties specified in Rule 6. Rule 9 gives the procedure for imposing major penalties and Rule 11 deals with imposing minor penalties. 3. In relation to Rule 9 in the case of any non-gazetted railway servant, an authority competent to impose of major penalties specified in Rule 6. 4. In relation to clauses A and B of Sub-Rule 1 of Rule 11, in the case of a non-gazetted railway servant, an authority competent to impose any of the penalties specified in Rule 6. Under this rule a Rule 2C, viz. Disciplinary authority which has been prescribed separately for two purposes, lay for initiating the proceeding for imposing penalty and for imposing penalty/suspension. This amounts to that the proceeding for major penalty may be initiated even by the authority empowered to impose only minor penalties. In case of gazetted officer, the punishment can be imposed only by the authority competent to impose the particular punishment. This differs in case of non-gazetted staff where the proceeding for major penalty can be taken only by an authority who has powers to impose at least any one of the major penalties. Suspension. Suspension means the suspension of official activities of a railway servant. The suspension is not a penalty. Competent authority to suspend. The classes of railway servants who may be placed under suspension and the authority by whom they may so placed shall be as specified in Schedules 1, 2 and 3 of the Disciplines and Appeal Rules, 1968, and briefly explained below. A. A senior supervisor in charge in grade 4,500 to 7,000 Rs and above may suspend Group D and C staff in scale of pay rising up to Rs 4,900. Subject to report to district officer or assistant officer in charge within 24 hours in the case of Group C staff. The Railway Administration will notify lists of supervisors in charge for this purpose. B. Assistant officers, junior scale and Group B, may suspend Group D and C staff up to scale Rs 4,000 to 6,000. C. Senior Scale Officer and Assistant Officer, Junior Scale and Group B, holding independent charge may suspend Group D and C staff up to the scale Rs 5,000 to 8,000. D. Junior Administrative Officers and above may suspend any Group D and C staff. 1. A railway servant may be placed under suspension. A. Where a disciplinary proceeding against him is contemplated or is pending, or B. Where in the opinion of the authority competent to place a railway servant under suspension, he has engaged himself in activities prejudicial to the interest of the security of the state, or C. Where a case against him in respect of any criminal offense is under investigation, inquiry or trial. 2. A railway servant shall be deemed to have been placed under suspension by an order of the competent authority. A. With effect from the date of his detention, if he is detained in custody, whether on a criminal charge or otherwise, for a period exceeding 48 hours. B. With effect from the date of his conviction, if in the event of a conviction for an offense, he is sentenced to a term of imprisonment exceeding 48 hours and is not forthwith dismissed or removed or compulsorily retired consequent to such conviction. 3. Where a penalty of dismissal, removal or compulsorily retirement from service imposed upon a railway servant under suspension is set aside in appeal or on review under these rules and the case is remitted for further inquiry or action or with any other directions, the order of his suspension shall be deemed to have continued in force on and from the date of the original order of dismissal, removal or compulsory retirement and shall remain in force until further orders. 4. Where a penalty of dismissal, removal or compulsory retirement from service imposed upon a railway servant is set aside or declared or rendered void in consequence of or by a decision of a court of law and the disciplinary authority on consideration of the circumstances of the case, decides to hold a further inquiry against him on the allegations on which the penalty of dismissal, removal or compulsory retirement was originally imposed, the railway servant shall be deemed to have been placed under suspension by the competent authority from the date of the original order of dismissal, removal or compulsory retirement and shall continue to remain under suspension until further orders. An order of suspension made or deemed to have been made shall not valid after a period of 90 days unless it is extended after review for a further period before expiry of 90 days. The review of an order of suspension shall be done by the authority which is competent to modify or revoke the suspension on the recommendation of the review committee constituted for the purpose, and such competent authority shall pass orders either extending or revoking the suspension before expiry of 90 days from the date of order of suspension. Subsequent reviews shall be made before expiry of the extended period of suspension. Extension of time of suspension shall not be for a period exceeding 180 days at a time. RBs No. ED and A 2004 RG 68 of the 18th of July 2006, Baharis 94 2006.